So this is the 26th of December 2020, and we haven't collected today's Fleet Street papers because the outlet that we have to use is not open yet. It's open from 900 hours GMT. And so we are looking at for the same mix of propaganda and ignorance and contradiction that Fleet Street has been peddling throughout the last 11 months. And it's a Boris graph of the Thursday, the 24th of December, 2020. Boris graph is like the house organ, daily house organ for the Boris Johnson fronted cabal, which is treated as a business. It's a corrupt business, the most corrupt version of business. There is no kind of transparency, there is no ethics, there is no morality. So it's the daily propaganda disguised as the broad. It's a broadsheet paper that is called the Daily Boris Graph. We call it the Boris Graph. It has got two things. One is Boris Johnson, of course, shielding him from all evidence or all evidence-based exposures and evidence of his failures and his lying. So they got the same pattern of shielding Boris Johnson from all evidence-based criticism, valid, objectively verified criticism of the Boris Johnson fronted cabal. And they're doing this on two things. One is the failure, absolute abysmal failure, contradiction, and dishonesty. On top of that, the normal kind of cruelty and negligence and incompetence. Now, we have not looked at the private eye, which is dated the 18th of December to 7th of January, 18th of December 2020 to 7th of January 2021, and it's number 1537. Normally, we would have looked at it a week ago because it came out a week, well, more than a week ago, obviously. 18th of December means Friday, so it was 17th of the December was Thursday. So Wednesday was 16th, or Tuesday was the 15th. So Tuesday, the 15th of December, and today is the Saturday, the 26th of December. So it's more than a week because of the lockdown and various kind of timetables and schedules that we have to make for collecting publications from outlets. And this is, of course, private eye is not available. Most of the so-called news agents or outlets or shops. And so we didn't look at this current issue, which we would have done at least by Wednesday last week. So it's 9 days, 9 days later than what would happen normally in our schedules. And the reason we are explaining this is because this page it's a column, but it's a page. It's never more than a page of the private eye, which is called the Rotten Boroughs. The Rotten Boroughs is edited by somebody who is very ignorant and very corrupt and very opportunistic. And when we say ignorant, we don't say ignorant because there is no other word for it, but he is ignorant. This person is ignorant of what goes on in local councils. And secondly, is not original. For example, on the coverage of the Croydon Corrupt Council, they have been retailing stupidly the idiotic, quote, radical solution to Croydon Council's corruption by almost exclusively relying on the equally stupid Croydon, inside Croydon. Inside Croydon is like some of the so-called not mainstream, but subsidiary to the mainstream so-called local printed newspapers. And inside Croydon has been idiotically peddling the cause for having a referendum on having a mayor, elected mayor in Croydon. Now the stupidity is unacceptable, untenable, unjustifiable. And it is brazenly obvious that the morons who are behind this campaign for having a elected mayor in Croydon on the basis that the elected mayor would solve Croydon's criminal culture and corruption. It's proof that the morons don't have any idea about the current elected mayors. There are not many, but those that have been lumbered, the councils and the communities corresponding to those councils, the boundaries, the people in the areas that constitute a borough, they're absolutely being betrayed and let down by the corrupt mayor post and post holder. Why we are saying this? Because the arrest in the beginning of this month of the current elected mayor of Liverpool City Council, Joe Anderson, along with which transpired 2 days later with Derek Hatton, who was the deputy leader of Liverpool City Council in the 1980s, on suspicion of attempting to commit bribery and witness intimidation. That was the summary given by the Liverpool police, Merseyside police, for the arrest of Joe Anderson. And Derek Hatton was arrested on suspicion of witness intimidation in connection with building contracts. Now, anyone who has been watching this program, whether live or afterwards, would know that we have been exclusively diagnosing the contents of the Fleet Street papers and also the mainstream broadcasting media and the so-called mainstream kind of regional papers and local papers. And they would know that we have said exclusively, we have been saying and publishing that the reason why in Tower Hamlets we have opposed and we oppose the imposition of the corrupt post of elected mayor is because demographically and cephalogically, that is to do with the behavior of electors, we know from the experience of the last 50 years that we have been studying actively, the Tower Hamlets cannot have an elected mayor post held by honest person. An honest person cannot get elected to the post. Not just to that post. On the honest person and Tower Hamlets Council or councillors or elected post holders do not go together. So we said that in addition to the other corrupt and faulty components and implications and consequences of having an elected mayor, in Tower Hamlets in particular, there will be inevitably either a Bangladeshi person who will be elected because of the composition of the electors and the electorates, or whoever would get elected would need the majority votes cast by Bangladeshis capable and eligible to vote in Tower Hamlets. Now, on those two counts, we have long concluded that Tower Hamlets Council cannot be anything other than a corrupt council. That implies the aspect of the Bangladeshi community's election behavior, or electoral behavior, which is not conducted by assessing the morality and the ethics and the democratic accountability either of the candidates seeking election or of the council post-election, whatever the post. And in the 50 years that Tower Hamlets, well, not 50 years, let's say Tower Hamlets Council has existed for 55 years. 55 years. And since 1965. And in the 55 years that it has existed, it has been a corrupt council. And that is long before Bangladeshi component in the elected councillors list surfaced in any significant way at all. Long before that. And there were 2 or 3 or 4 councillors altogether from the Bangladeshi background and elected on the votes of Bangladeshi kind of voters. And they are listed as Abbas Uddin. He's now added his name reversed his name and invented an extension for formal records. He may have had it in his private life and private correspondence and profile, but as far as the official records are concerned, Abbasuddin was the name. And halal is an invention in that way. And why he changed from Abbasuddin to Halal Abbas is still not publicly explained, but it can be interpreted by the various behavior and incidents that Abbasuddin alias Halal wanted to again invent a name and a persona for career reasons, so that the association with the failed name, political name that is, Abbasuddin, would cease and be replaced by something that to him must have sounded better, but it doesn't. It sounds disingenuous, to say the least. To suddenly change his name from Abbasuddin after many, many years as councillor to Halal Abbas. Halal Abbas is not a name in the nomenclature, in the context of the nomenclature that he uses and he is part of. Abbas, Halal Abbas is not a name, because in the nomenclature, in the system of names, names have meanings, and parts of the names are connected with the meaning. So there is no such connection between Halal and Abbas. And that is the obvious evidence that this was ill thought and ill considered, and like the rest of his political career as an elected councillor for many, many years in the name of the council ward that includes Brick Lane, or includes most of Brick Lane, Abbasuddin Halal has had a career but has no substance in the career in terms of representing the needs of the community. Why we are saying this? Because Abbasuddin alias Halal is one of the mysterious elements, active, with publicly still dubious kind of explanation, if he has given any explanation, as to whether there should be a mayor, elected mayor post or not. And the reason why he has been dubious, to put it very kindly, is because he wants to be installed as the elected mayor. He tried to do that in 2010, and he was not successful. Another Bangladeshi got in, and another Bangladeshi got in by exactly the corrupt, undemocratic, anti-community, anti-social, pro-racist, opportunistic mess that the crooks who sponsored the elected mayor referendum in 2009 and 2010 actually were able to deliver at their best. And those crooks are very much active in regrouping to foist someone, if not Lutfur Rahman, and we say if not Lutfur Rahman, we shall come to that in a minute. If not Lutfur Rahman, somebody else that the crooks can use as their nominee and as their stooge in that corrupt post. And the reason why crooks in Tower Hamlets want a stooge as the elected mayor post holder is because the elected mayor post holder is given de facto impunity from accountability. So corruption can be done on a very large scale without any accountability being tangible accountability, real accountability being visible or delivered to the community. And the evidence of that is in the failure or choice or the decision by the Metropolitan Police in London, by the Crown Prosecution Service, to prosecute Lutfur Rahman or prosecute anybody else active in abusing Tower Hamlets Council's significant resources, amount of resources, while Lutfur Rahman was in post as elected mayor for 6 calendar years. And this is now 2020. And Lutfur Rahman was in post for 6 calendar years from October 2010 until 23rd of April 2015, when Richard Morey, the election commissioner, declared Lutfur Rahman's election as mayor on 22nd of May 2014 as void, that is, as having legally not taken place at all. Now, the crooks who sponsored Lutfur Rahman, promoted him, knew that he was a stooge and that he wanted to use him as a stooge. We shall come to that in a minute. Now, the list of the 4 Bangladeshi origin councillors during the 1980s were, one was Ashiq Ali, who behaved as an absolute moron, and one was Nurul Haque, who behaved as a creep. We shall come to why we call him the creep. And Sadiq Ahmed, who behaved with such wanton betrayal and disgraceful ingratitude to the community that the community, the Bangladeshis, were forced to burn an effigy of him outside the then Tower Hamlets Council town hall in Patriot Square, London E2. And not long after that, it was reported that Sadiq Ahmed had died of heart failure. We have no medical evidence of what his cause of death was, or at least we haven't accessed. But that was how it was publicly stated. So Nurul Haque, Ashiq Ali, Sadiq Ahmed, and Abbas Uddin alias Halal. Now there was another councillor in the 1980s, another 2 councillors, and they belonged to the what was then the SDP Liberal Alliance. And they fought the election, contested the 1986 Tower Hamlets Council election on the banner of a racist kind of party. Despite that, they had as candidates 2 Bangladeshis. One was Abdur Rahim and one was Sajjad Mia, both of whom had allegations against them. And both of them had allegations against them about housing abuse and corruption. Without going into details, we can go into details, but we won't for this edition. Those two somehow were able to escape criminal prosecution, and so therefore they were not convicted on the records, and they were not sent to jail or fined or whatever. So from the summary of what I have said about these four councillors, 6 councillors in the 1980s, it must be very clear that the conduct of Bangladeshi councillors when separately seen, the conduct in the case of Ashik Ali showed that he was an absolute moron, an idiot. Now, if anyone watching this wants to challenge the fact that Ashik Ali was an absolute moron and an idiot when he was a councillor, can tell us the evidence, if there is any evidence, to contradict what we are saying. We studied and engaged with the study of Ashik Ali's behavior in the community. And he was an absolute moron in the community as well. Illustrating the point of his idiocy, it was reported a few years ago, before he actually died, that he had died. Such was the depth of his idiocy that instead of saying that he was happily still around, he contacted the Tower Hamlets Council and expressed his deep satisfaction that never in his entire career had so many people made contacts about wanting to know about him, until the unfounded rumor or information circulated that he had died. Now that showed his stupidity and idiocy and lack of dignity. And he completely failed to get it. That showed he was admitting that he was not even bothered to refer to his time as a councillor in relation to the needs of the people. And he, of course, didn't get it, that people didn't actually treat him seriously as a councillor, not as many people as could have done, because he was an idiot. Now, as if that is not bad enough, this is another example of why we call licensed law traders. This idiot was also a listed barrister, not practicing one, but he was a listed barrister. So in the Bangladeshi community in Tower Hamlets, or a licensed law trader who can be called a barrister is treated by that word, barrister, as if he has knowledge and as if he has got sense of importance and responsibility. Ashik Ali didn't have it. Now we shall challenge anyone who disputes this about Ashik Ali, and we shall demand they produce actual correspondence and actual minutes of meetings that he recordedly attended and took part in. Now, these are factual points, unique evidential points we are making in support of the campaign that we support against having an elected mayor in Tower Hamlets. Because elected councillors that depend for their election to council on the Bangladeshi community's presence in council wards and on the electoral register are not delivering even 5%, and they have never delivered even 5% of democratic representation and democratic service. All of them, collectively, all of them have lied to the community, and they have lied about the community, and they have disgraced the presence of the Bangladeshis in Tower Hamlets by their behavior collectively. If anyone denies this, anyone disputes this, is welcome to cite evidence that substantially proves anything that we have said so far to be untrue or unfounded or unjustifiable or unjustified. We are saying that the Borough of Tower Hamlets is not fit to have a post like the elected mayor. Because historically and on the evidence and continuously, the evidence of the behavior of the councillors, the evidence of the behavior of the two persons that have taken the kind of post so far since October 2010, the evidence shows that they are all unfit, morally, ethically, democratically, transparently, and that they are not at all serving the community, which remains at the very top of the list of the most deprived, socially deprived, economically deprived, educationally deprived parts of England. And the frightening thing is that despite this history of corruption by Tower Hamlets Council over the last 65 years, and despite the fact that the Bangladeshi councillors have been all found to have behaved dishonestly, corruptly. And that doesn't mean that they have all been prosecuted. They have not been, of course, but they have been found by the ordinary people, the electors, whose testimony and whose evidence we are regularly checking and updating on. Their experiences, as told to us for the last 30 years, because it was 1990 when any significant number of Bangladeshi origin persons became councillors on Tower Hamlets Council. So over the last 30 years, we have been consistently given the evidence by people, electors, that these councillors are crooks, all of them. So on that basis, we said that Tower Hamlets Council should not have an elected mayor because the councillors themselves are dishonest. So it cannot be the case that the dishonest councillors would be wanting to expose the dishonesty by a dishonest, corrupt elected mayor post holder. Now, that is the problem within the council structure and within the council itself. Outside in the community, which is, we are talking about the context of the Bangladeshi parts of the electorates, there is no forum that is active and consists of hundreds of organizations that on paper exist in the name of serving the Bangladeshi community. So there is no forum, and there is a forum which is again not democratic, not transparent, and not known for its stand against corruption. That is the Tower Hamlets Council of Mosques. Apparently, it has meetings and etc., but it doesn't function in the ordinary sense of democracy and democratic organization. And that is part of the problem with the other so-called Muslim or Islamic kind of organizations, which are essentially based at the building complex known also as the East London Mosque and the London Muslim Center. These are names that suggest that people have access to these, but they don't. People are not able to access what goes on in the name of the East London Mosque Committee. It's not a democratic one, and it has not published the truth about its activities. It has become part of the kind of de facto ethnicity-linked, Muslim-linked operations as far as the UK security services and the UK Home Office and the UK Parliament and the royal family and the monarchy are concerned. For example, in the last few months, Williams and his wife Kate were given a short appearance at the London Muslim Center or the East London Mosque. And the pictures published of the people, other than Williams and his wife Kate, show no faces. All the faces of the people are photographed with their faces to the back of the camera, or their back to the camera, their backs being to the camera, not their faces. Their faces are invisible, let's say, or unrecognizable.